O. Henry. Gifts of the Magi. $1.87. That was all. Of these, 60 cents in coins of 1 cent each. For each of these coins he had to bargain with the grocer, the greengrocer, the butcher, so that even his ears burned with the silent disapproval that such thrift aroused. Della counted 3 times. $1.87. And tomorrow is Christmas. The only thing that could be done here was to slam on the old couch and roar. And that's exactly what Della did. Hence the philosophical conclusion that life consists of tears, sighs and smiles, and sighs predominate. While the mistress of the house goes through all these stages, let's look around the house itself. A furnished apartment for $8 a week. In the situation, there is not exactly blatant poverty, but rather eloquently silent poverty. At the bottom of the front door was a letterbox through which no letter could be squeezed through, and an electric bell button from which no mortal could make a sound. To this was added a card with the inscription, Mr. James Dillingham Young Dillingham, was unfolded in full length in the recent period of prosperity, when the holder of the said name received $30 a week. Now that the income had fallen to $20, the letters in the word Dillingham had faded, as if they were wondering whether they should be reduced to a modest and unpretentious D. But when Mr. James Dillingham Young came home and went upstairs to his room, he was invariably greeted with an exclamation of "Jim," and the affectionate embrace of Mrs. James Dillingham Young, already introduced to you under the name of Della. And that's really nice. Della stopped crying and ran her puff over her cheeks. She was now standing at the window, looking dejectedly at the gray cat strolling along the gray fence along the gray yard. Tomorrow is Christmas, and she has only $1.87 to give Jim. For many months she had won literally every cent, and this was all she had achieved. $20 a week won't get you far. The expenses turned out to be more than she bargained for. This is always the case with expenses. Only $1.87 for a present for Jim. Her Jim. How many joyful hours she spent thinking of something to give him for Christmas. Something very special, rare, precious, something even slightly worthy of the high honor of belonging to Jim. In the pier between the windows stood a dressing table. Have you ever had to look in the dressing table of an $8 furnished apartment? A very thin and very mobile person can, by observing the successive change of reflections in its narrow doors, form a fairly accurate idea of his own appearance. Della, who was fragile, managed to master this art. She suddenly jumped away from the window and rushed to the mirror. Her eyes sparkled, but the colors disappeared from her face in 20 seconds. With a quick movement, she pulled out the hairpins and let her hair down. I must tell you that the James Dillingham Young couple had 2 treasures that were a source of pride for them. One was Jim's gold watch, which belonged to his father and grandfather, the other was Della's hair. If the Queen of Sheba lived in the house opposite, Della, after washing her hair, would certainly dry her loose hair at the window, especially to make all the clothes and jewelry of Her Majesty fade. If King Solomon had served as a porter in the same house, and had all his wealth in the cellar, Jim, passing by, every time he would take his watch out of his pocket, just to see how he tears his beard with envy. And then Della's beautiful hair scattered, shining and shimmering like the jets of a chestnut waterfall. They went down below her knees and wrapped a cloak around almost her entire figure. But at once, nervous and in a hurry, she began to pick them up again. Then, as if hesitating, she stood motionless for a minute, and 2 or 3 tears fell on the old red carpet. An old brown jacket on her shoulders, an old brown hat on her head, and throwing up her skirts, sparkling with undried sparkles in her eyes, she was already rushing down into the street. The sign at which she stopped read, Madame Sofronie. All kinds of hair products. Della ran up to the 2nd floor and stopped, barely catching her breath. "Will you buy my hair?" she asked Madame. "I'm buying hair," Madame replied. "Take off your hat, we need to look at the goods." The chestnut waterfall flowed again. $20, said Madame, habitually weighing the thick mass on her hand. "Let's hurry," Della said. The next 2 hours flew by on pink wings. I apologize for the hackneyed metaphor. Della scoured the shops for a gift for Jim. Finally, she found it. Without a doubt, what was created for Jim, and only for him. Nothing like it had been found in other stores, and she had turned everything upside down in them. It was a platinum pocket watch chain, simple and austere, captivating for its true qualities, and not for its ostentatious brilliance, as all good things should be. Perhaps it could even be considered worthy of a watch. As soon as Della saw her, she knew that the chain must belong to Jim. She was just like Jim himself. Modesty and dignity, these qualities distinguished both of them. $21 had to be paid to the cashier, and Della hurried home with 87 cents in her pocket. With such a chain, Jim in any society will not be ashamed to ask what time it is. As splendid as his watch was, he often looked at it furtively, for it hung on a shoddy leather strap. At home, Della's animation subsided and gave way to foresight and calculation. She took out a curling iron, lit the gas, and set about repairing the damage caused by generosity combined with love. And this is always the hardest work, my friends, gigantic work. In less than 40 minutes her head was covered with curly little curls that made her look remarkably like a boy who had run away from school. She looked at herself in the mirror with a long, attentive, and critical look. "Well," she said to herself, "if Jim doesn't kill me as soon as he looks at me, he'll think I look like a chorus girl from Coney Island. But what was I to do, oh, what was I to do, when I had only $1.87? At 7 o'clock the coffee was brewed, a hot frying pan stood on the gas stove, waiting for mutton cutlets. Jim was never late. Della clutched the platinum chain in her hand and sat down on the edge of the table, close to the front door. Soon she heard his footsteps down the stairs and turned pale for a moment. She was in the habit of saying short prayers to God about the trivialities of life, and she whispered hurriedly, "Lord, make sure that he does not dislike me." The door opened, and Jim came in and closed it behind him. He had a thin, worried face. It is not an easy thing to be burdened with a family at 22. He needed a new coat for a long time, and his hands were freezing without gloves. Jim stood motionless at the door, like a setter scenting a quail. His eyes rested on Della with an expression she couldn't understand, and she felt scared. It was neither anger, nor surprise, nor reproach, nor horror. Not one of those feelings that could be expected. He just stared at her without taking his eyes off, his face not changing its strange expression. Della jumped off the table and rushed to him. "Jim dear," she cried, "don't look at me like that. I cut my hair and sold it, because I wouldn't survive if I didn't have anything to give you for Christmas. They will grow back again. You're not angry, are you? I couldn't do otherwise. My hair grows very quickly. Well, wish me a Merry Christmas, Jim, and let's have a happy holiday. If you only knew what a gift I have prepared for you, what a wonderful, wonderful gift. Did you cut your hair?" Jim asked tensely, as if, in spite of his brain's hard work, he still couldn't grasp the fact. "Yes, I cut it and sold it," Della said. "But you're going to love me anyway, aren't you?" "I'm still the same, although with short hair." Jim looked around the room in bewilderment. "So, then your braids are gone?" he asked with senseless insistence. "Don't look for them, you won't find them," Della said. "I'm telling you, I sold them, I shaved them and sold them. It's Christmas Eve, Jim. Be gentle with me, because I did it for you. Perhaps the hairs on my head can be counted," she went on, and her gentle voice suddenly sounded serious. "But no one could measure my love for you. Frying cutlets, Jim?" And Jim came out of his stupor. He took his Della in his arms. "Let's be modest and spend a few seconds examining some foreign object. Which is more, $8 a week or $1 million a year? A mathematician or a sage will give you the wrong answer. The Magi brought precious gifts, but there was not one among them. However, these vague hints will be explained later. Jim took a bundle from his coat pocket and threw it on the table. "Don't misunderstand me, Dell," he said. "No hairstyle or haircut can make me fall out of love with my girl. But open this package, and then you will understand why I was a little taken aback in the first minute." White, nimble fingers tore at the twine and paper. There was a cry of delight, and at once, alas, purely femininely replaced by a stream of tears and moans, so that it was necessary to immediately apply all the sedatives at the disposal of the owner of the house. On the table were the combs, the same set of combs, one back and two lateral, which Della had long admired in a Broadway window. Wonderful combs, real tortoiseshell, with shiny pebbles embedded in the edges, and just the color of her brown hair. They were expensive. Della knew this, and her heart languished and languished for a long time with an impossible desire to possess them. And now they belonged to her, but there were no more beautiful braids that would adorn them with the longed-for luster. Nevertheless, she pressed the combs to her chest, and when at last she found the strength to raise her head and smile through her tears, she said, "My hair grows very fast, Jim." Then she suddenly jumped up like a scolded kitten and exclaimed, "Oh my God!" After all, Jim had not yet seen her wonderful gift. She hurriedly handed him the chain in her open palm. The matte precious metal seemed to sparkle in the rays of her stormy and sincere joy. "Isn't it lovely, Jim? I ran around the whole city until I found it. Now you can watch what time it is at least 100 times a day. Give me a watch. I want to see how it all looks together." But Jim, instead of obeying, lay down on the couch, put both hands under his head, and smiled. "Dell," he said, "we'll have to hide our presents for the time being. Let them lie down for a while. They are too good for us now. I sold the watch to buy you combs. And now, perhaps, it's time to fry cutlets." The Magi, those who brought gifts to the baby in the manger, were, as you know, wise, amazingly wise people. They started the fashion of making Christmas gifts. And since they were wise, their gifts were wise, perhaps even with a stipulated right of exchange in case of unsuitability. And I've told you an unremarkable story about two stupid children in an $8 apartment who in the most unwise way sacrificed their greatest treasures for each other. But let it be said, for the edification of the wise men of our day, that of all the givers these two were the wisest. Of all those who give and receive gifts, only those like them are truly wise. Everywhere and everywhere. They are the Magi. Friends, thank you for watching. Support the channel with subscriptions, comments, and a thumbs up. I am waiting for you at the next get-together with the book. Your narrator, Irene.